UVA football. The Andy Poland Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So if I was describing this to somebody who hadn't seen the game, I would describe it thusly. With 5 minutes and 16 seconds left to play, it was a mistake-filled snoozer between two really bad teams. And then all hell broke loose. Oh, my God, what happened in that game? Just the last 3 minutes alone were insane. And how do you make sense of this? How do you look at this and say, yeah, this is a team that should be in the playoffs. This is a team that people were talking about being in the Super Bowl a few weeks ago with a quarterback who wasn't just going to win Rookie of the Year. He was going to win the MVP. And now what do you make of this? This is, wow. Now, I'm going to get into this. These teams, maybe we should have known, especially Thanksgiving weekend, because this is the time of year that they've usually had these insane games. And here we are now just 3 days away from the 50th anniversary of the Clint Longley game. And if you're too young to remember that, ask your dad or ask your grandfather. But I remember it, and I'll be talking about it coming up shortly, mixing it in with a whole bunch of wild games between the Cowboys and whatever name they're playing under, Redskins, Washington football team, or Commanders. And this goes into the vault of games that is remembered, I'm sure, for a long, long time. I mean, do you remember when they played on the 24th of November in 2024? Oh, my God. And, you know, when you look at the stats, they don't tell you anything other than, you know, the penalties, the problems on third downs. But the Commanders had over 400 yards of offense in this game. But, man, up until the last 5 minutes of the game, they weren't doing bupkis against a team that has a terrible, terrible defense. And, you know, you step back from it, and I think of what I used to hear from Bill Parcells when I was covering the Giants many years ago. He used to address the media as fellas because, as I recall, there weren't any women covering the team at the time. And he would say, fellas, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And anyone who's ever run a marathon will tell you that when you get to the 20-mile mark, you're really only about halfway done because the last 6 miles feel like the first 20. It's that hard. And that's kind of what we're seeing from this football team. Man, they got off to a great start. And remember the game against Cincinnati where they didn't have a punt. Remember how they were rolling up the points week after week after week, an offensive juggernaut. And, oh, my God, Cliff Kingsbury's got the entire world fooled. He's got his great young quarterback molding Jaden Daniels into be the next superstar, which he may still be. You know, there are growing pains that go along with this. But we saw it in the last couple of games prior to this one. Game kind of lackluster against Pittsburgh. And then against Philadelphia, they weren't good at all offensively. And then we saw what happened yesterday. But this was last Thursday. The coordinators speak on Thursday, offensive and defensive coordinators. And Cliff Kingsbury was asked this question, and he kind of chafed at it.
I'm not saying this is happening this year, but historically your offenses have declined a little bit in the second half of seasons. Are you aware of that, and is it important for you to, like, break that trend?
I would have to see what you're talking about historically, like the references, but, yeah, I don't have any plans to do anything to break that trend that I know of. Yeah. I mean, I would have to see what years you're talking about. So I was thinking about doing triple option. Like, is that what you're thinking? Like, I don't know. Like, yeah, we're going to do what we do.
Triple option might have been a good alternative yesterday because whatever they were calling wasn't working. The Cowboys in the first half were essentially handing them the game. Here, take this. And they couldn't do it. A 3-3 game at the half? And this is from Nikki Jabala's story in the Post today. To grasp how nutty the Commanders' performance was Sunday, consider this. In the first half alone, Dallas had one field goal blocked, had another field goal attempt hit the right upright, lost a fumble forced by defensive tackle Johnny Newton by linebacker Bobby Wagner, botched a snap, was called for holding on 3rd and 1, had a punt deflected, and was intercepted, though it was negated by a Washington penalty, and somehow the score was 3-3 at the half because Washington's offense couldn't turn the extra opportunities into points. And at what point does this become concerning? You heard Cliff Kingsbury last Thursday. We won't hear from him again until this Thursday. But what about the head coach, Dan Quinn, who talks after every game? Level of concern with an offense which right now can't seem to get it done, especially when it matters.
Yeah, I wouldn't say concerned in the level I would use for maybe your word, but not mine. I want to make sure that like everything that we're doing, we want to go attack it. And injuries are not like we all have that. I mean, every team does. So that's part of the gig. And I like that we have a good deep crew to go hit it. But execution is really where we're at and what we're going to dig on hard. And that's what we'll focus on heading into this week.
Dan, just the weirdness of the end of that game. You've been around this sport for a long time. I mean, can you capture how strange it is?
There's been a lot of weird already. I love it, and that's what I'm wanting that belief to go, because we've been in these being battle tested as a first year group more than most, and you want to be able. That's kind of why I said what I said at the beginning. It's not just learning them and being in these end of game winning time moments. It's about winning them, and we've won some, but I want to make sure like every time we go, this is the edge, this is where to go, this is the time to go capture it. And I love that we're never out of the fight, but I do want to make sure it doesn't have to go to that space. And that part, is one that, we're going to work hard on to get right.
Every time I watch a Dan Quinn news conference, and I watch most of them, my feel about whatever he says is based more on next year and the year beyond than this year. I mean, they don't have a team that's going to contend for the Super Bowl. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we've got two teams in the NFC that have clearly separated themselves out. The Detroit Lions, who are a juggernaut right now, and they won 9 straight games. The Philadelphia Eagles, who got 255 yards from Saquon Barkley last night in a big win on the road. Those are the two teams to beat, and Washington is not really in their league right now, and they're not experienced like they are. Detroit got to the NFC Championship game last year. Philadelphia's been to the Super Bowl last couple of years. These are teams that are going to be incredibly tough to knock out once you get to January. That's understood. So when I hear him talk, I think he's talking more about the macro of this team. And, let's step back a second and look at where they are and throw out kind of the euphoria of September and October. I mean, things have settled down as they were probably expected to. This was not really sustainable. The first 9 games of the year, when they were 7-2, they had 12 3-and-outs in all 9 games. In the last 3 games alone, they've had 12 3-and-outs. So in other words, in 3 games, they've had as many as they've had in their first 9. First 9 games, they had 19 punts. First 9, 19 punts. Last 3, 17 punts. And Tress Way, who went full games without punting in the early part of the season, punted 6 times yesterday. So they have come back to earth. And as Tom Lavero wrote in his column today, he says, this is what everybody signed up for this year. It wasn't the greatest rookie quarterback that the league has ever seen. The expectation was that he would be a young quarterback with promise and growing pains, not an MVP candidate. This was a low-cost team patched together by general manager Adam Peters in the first year of a rebuild, with the coaching staff brought together for the first time. It was supposed to be a season of learning, small steps in the right direction. And because they sprinted out in front, and what do we see in long-distance races? There's always what they call the rabbit, somebody who sets the pace. That's what they did. But right now, they pretty much are who we expected them to be. Don't you think so? And, you got to go back on this, too. Remember when they hired Adam Peters? That was a really big deal. That was a nice hire, a guy who'd been successful with 2 successful organizations, the Patriots and the 49ers. You can't really do better than that in training to move up to this job. He did look far and wide for a coach. And remember how jazzed up we got about Ben Johnson. And as you pull out, I mean, look what Ben Johnson is doing right now with the Detroit Lions. They're hanging big points week after week after week. He's going to be a head coach whenever he wants to be a head coach, but he turned him down. He elected to stay in Detroit. So when they hired Dan Quinn, it was kind of a yawner. And it's turned out to be a very good hire. This is an organization where the culture needed to be changed, and clearly he's done that. He's done a good job with that. But what he's doing now is kind of mirroring what he did in Atlanta. He got off to a 5-0 start there, and in the last part of the season, last 11 games, they went 3-8 and finished 8-8 and out of the playoffs. They made the Super Bowl the next year. So he almost kind of did a reverse Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs started out 0-5 in his first year. They finished 8-8 and actually won the Super Bowl the following year. He should have won that Super Bowl, but they couldn't hold the 28-3 lead against Tom Brady and the Patriots. So this is kind of what you got when you hired him, and I don't think he has disappointed anybody. But remember the kind of yawn that everybody had when Dan Quinn was hired, and not that he's done a yawner of a job. I think he's done a very good job. But the reality is not what the reality was in the first 9 games of the season. The reality is they're going to have to scrape now. They got a Tennessee team that's 3-8, but they're coming off a big win yesterday over the Houston Texans, who beat Dallas badly on Monday night. And then they have the bye week, which they badly need. And, they're starting to run out of players, too. It looks like Austin Eckler. I wonder if he should even end his career. This is his second concussion of the season, and this one they had to take him to the hospital for. So I'm not real optimistic about him coming back this year. And Brian Robinson, who's battled injuries all year long, tried to come back in the second quarter. I guess he got hurt really early in the game and came back in the second quarter with the sprained ankle but couldn't go. So, you're looking at Chris Rodriguez next week, and maybe they win that game. But if they don't win that game, they're going into a bye with a 4-game losing streak, and who knows what they can do. The good news for them is that if you look at the playoff picture now, as I told you, it's Detroit and Philadelphia and pretty much everybody else. Detroit 10-1, Philadelphia now 9-2 after last night. Then you got 2 teams leading really bad divisions. Seattle 6-5 and Atlanta 6-5. They should get in as division winners. Minnesota a shocking 9-2 with Sam Darnold. I don't think they can really play themselves out of contention at this point. And Green Bay looks really good. Green Bay blew the doors off San Francisco yesterday. So, Washington at 7-5. Well, that's not the greatest spot to be in the 7th seed. The teams that are chasing them for that, Arizona, they beat the Cardinals earlier this year. They're 6-5. Rams are 5-6. They're just not talented enough to sustain, I don't think. And San Francisco looks like a mess right now at 5-6. So if they can hang on, if they can beat Tennessee, and if they can beat New Orleans, and if they split the last 2 games, they're not beating Philadelphia here, but if they split the last 2 games of the year, either beat Atlanta at home or win at Dallas in the final game, they should get 10 wins and probably get into the playoffs. So there's that. Now let's take apart this 2-point question, 2-point or 1 point, and the crushing blow of seeing the the last extra point attempt by Austin Seibert go wide. You can say it was a bad snap, but the responsibility of the kicker is to kick it through the uprights on an extra point. So now in retrospect, you look back and you go, well, they had the momentum there. They had the incredible touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin. The stadium's fired up. The team is fired up. Dallas looks deflated. Why not go for 2 there and go for the knockout blow? Quinn had this response.
No, I thought if after we score, we'd go for 1. And the reason behind that, I thought, let's get back into it. But we don't have to decide it on this play. And so that was where I thought, let's go. And then, hey, Joe, we got 1 stop. We'll get it. And then at the coin toss, let's go through the whole process again and reset it. So I thought in that way, that was the right call on that. As obviously, you're not factoring in the other part of things. But that was my thought going into it. The previous one, if we had scored, we had to kick a field goal. I wanted to kick the field goal in prior to the 2 minutes so we could use that, have the other timeout. So when you're down 2 scores, you're kind of a little more strategic to get a kick in prior to a certain time. So that's what we had told Jaden in the offense. Let's get it in before this time. And so it gave us a chance to come back to it, get the stop, to go, and then the big one to Terry. So, but I was thinking 1 the whole time. Sorry, long-winded answer to your question.
Okay. Well, I at the moment, I thought going for 1 was the right thing. I mean, he'd missed an extra point earlier in the game, Seibert, but I didn't think he would miss 2, but he did. Bad snap or no bad snap, I'll give him some credit for this. As they say, success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan. He took the blow. He took the responsibility.
I just want to play better for my teammates, Definitely don't want to do that. Just wasn't striking well, but it means a lot to me to be here with these guys. So just want to put my best foot moving forward.
That final extra point, it was a low snap. How much of a difference did that make?
Didn't make a difference at all. It's on me.
How did you feel coming in? You missed a couple weeks.
Felt fine. I made the decision to play, and here we are.
A couple more, go.
How did you feel? How it feels when you're kicking well. When you're in that kind of groove, did you feel something different with yourself?
No. Just didn't play well.
That's one.
What happened on the outside? What happened on the outside kick?
I should have hit a little bit more left. Hit it right to the guy. That's what you get when that happens. So that falls on me too.
And on the kick return for score, were you trying to get it out of the end zone, or what were you trying to do on that one?
Hit a dirty ball, make him field it.
So it was intentional. The one to Cavante Turner, Cavante Turpin, who took the kick back for a touchdown. I would have kicked it out of the end zone there. Dan Quinn was asked about that. He said it's not as easy to kick it out of the end zone as you think. No, it is. A professional kicker should have done that, and that was a mistake. Now, if they make the tackle at the 2-yard line where Turpin made that incredible spin move and got up the field, maybe, but he's the leading kick returner in the league. I wonder about the thought process in that, but that was the long explanation as to why he did it. Now on the extra point, and I watched it, I felt like that it was a very low snap, and Tress Way did what he could to get it up in time for him to kick it, but it was a wobbly hold, and I don't really fault Siebert as much as others do, but I was kind of surprised to hear this as the CBS crew broke this down, and this was Nate Burleson, who's part of the group with JB and Matt Ryan and Bill Cowher, the Super Bowl winning coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who was early in his career a special teams coach. And so this was the conversation that they had about the extra point, and I was a little bit surprised to hear Cowher say what he said about it.
I'm no kicker, but as a kicker, you see a bad...
Just a bad kick to me. I know
just a bad kick.
It was a bad kick.
But even as a kicker, I'm no kicker, but as a kicker, you see a bad snap.
No.
And isn't there a hesitation there?
There's trust you have to have. There's a degree of trust you have to have as a kicker with that whole.
But it throws off the timing,
It
Coach.
may throw off all those things, but those are the concentration, having coached special teams.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Okay,
you're
I've coached special teams. It's not always going to be perfect. You're going to have it inside, you're going to have it low. I'd much rather have it lower than higher.
So you're telling your kicker, you got to go through your motion, kick through whatever you see in front of you.
You have to trust the fact that ball's going to be down. And as I looked at the holder did a great job to me picking that off and putting that ball, laces were away from him. And I think it may have, though he may have altered his focus and his concentration on there, maybe trying to slow down the operation. You can't slow down the operation, which is why, to me, he got through it and missed it left.
So there might be a decision to make on a kicker. I guess Zane Gonzalez is still hanging around. And Austin Siebert, who was coming off a hip injury. Now, he's a guy who's bounced around a little bit. And I wonder, how confident he felt about his position on the team so that when he was cleared to play, you can only clear a guy so much based on MRIs and things like that. He had to tell him he felt good. He did, maybe pushing it a little bit. He shanked a field goal off his ankle, which was a terrible kick. And then to miss 2 extra points in a game that was winnable with even one of them, you wonder about that and whether they will stick with him. He did a really good job. They went through like 3 different kickers between preseason and the first game, and he was automatic. In his first game, he set a record with 7 field goals. But right now, he may not be fully healthy, and maybe wasn't fully upfront with the team about his health. And because of that, they have now lost 3 straight games. What's going on with them? More analysis on that, including a former quarterback for Dan Quinn, Matt Ryan, part of the CBS crew. They kicked it around for a few minutes. We'll get to that. Plus, this game yesterday, just another one in a wild series of games against the Cowboys. I'll go through some of the wildest ones as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
I'll be interested to hear what Bram Weinstein has to say coming up at 11 o'clock. He called yesterday's crazy game yesterday at Northwest Stadium. And if I live another 66 years, I don't know if I'll ever see another game like that, but if you've watched the Cowboys-Washington series over the years, these things tend to happen, and I will get to Get to some of that. Yesterday, all the oddities outlined here by Barry's Reluga in a front-page story in the Post. He says, consider the following buffet of oddities, all of which were contained in the last 3 minutes and 2 seconds of Sunday's frenzy. A 99-yard kickoff return for a Cowboys touchdown that seemed to put the game away again. A 51-yard field goal by Austin Seibert that made him look competent. A you're not kidding again moment for rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels, who found Terry McLaurin for what McLaurin turned into a sneaky, snaking 86-yard touchdown with 21 seconds left to pull the Commanders within 27-26. Seibert's yanked extra point that turned delirium into deflation, and then a final galling return of an onside kick by Dallas's Thomas to provide the final margin. That doesn't include the field goal the Commanders blocked in the first quarter, or the field goal the Cowboys drilled off the right upright, or the snap over the Cowboys quarterback head, or Seibert's previous missed extra point. You get the point. That kind of game. It's 3 straight losses. They have been relatively close, although this was a real stinker offensively until the end of the game. Philadelphia was a poorly played game on their part, and Pittsburgh, they blew a 10-point lead. Didn't do enough of the things to close the deal. Matt Ryan, who you would think would have really good things to say about Dan Quinn. They went to a Super Bowl together. They are still good friends. Quinn was interviewed by Ryan a few weeks ago, and they seem to be very close. But he doesn't say poorly coached team, but he says some things here that would lead you to believe that they're not as buttoned up as perhaps they should be. This is Matt Ryan with the CBS crew, with James Brown and Nate Burleson and Bill Cowher as they discussed what's wrong with the Commanders now.
It's interesting with Washington, as we've seen all year. It's the details.
Yeah.
In critical times, to do the little things right. You've got a snap, a kick, and a hold that you got to get down to put that into overtime. A couple of weeks ago against Pittsburgh, you have the 4th down or the jump offside situation at the end of the game that ends their chance. The difference right now between 2 or 3 more wins for the Washington Commanders, small little details. They have to get it cleaned up.
And, Coach, let's go back to your point. Again, division games at this point.
And you can see it happen all afternoon. You sit there, we talked about Houston and Tennessee. You talk about Washington and Dallas. It's amazing. I mean, and these teams, they don't look at records. They're the one they have to play these teams twice a year. And these games become personal.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's something because it takes you into the next year. And these are the same teams you're going to play twice next year as well.
Yeah.
Throw the records out. Forget about your superstars. Doesn't matter if Dak's playing or not. We know you better than you know yourself. So this game will be competitive regardless of how we both are coming into this one.
You know what? You were talking about Washington and in terms of what this means to a young squad trying to get there. Yeah. Elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, for Washington, this is tough, right? It's been multiple times throughout the year where it's lack of discipline, lack of fundamentals, lack of just being on the same page has not, gotten them to where they want to go to. I think of the offsides penalty against the Pittsburgh Steelers today, fumbled execution on the snap, place and hold on the extra point. Just disappointing. But Jaden Daniels keeps putting them back in these positions. He has no flinch to his game. That throw down the sideline to Terry McLaurin to get them up the sideline to score right there. I mean, it's impressive what he's done.
Yeah, it's unbelievable when you look at what the Commanders have done. They have really turned around not just their play on the field, but we are looking at this organization differently. It's tough, though, when you look at the losses. Today, forget about that onside return. That was less than a touchdown.
Yeah.
The week before, a touchdown loss to the Eagles. The week before that, they lose by 1 to the Steelers. And we remember the Ravens took them down to the wire. They lose by a touchdown. These are all really good teams they're losing to, and they're in every single game. And they still got a shot to make the playoffs. That gives you a little bit of hope knowing that we're good enough to play with the big dogs.
There's no question. And it was a divisional game. We've talked about that all day long. But the thing Cooper Rush has done in these last 3 weeks has been very impressive. He's out there for Dak Prescott. And for Mike McCarthy, this is a big win going on the road against all the things you're talking about, a team that's in the contention. They aren't. But, man, they came out and played well today.
Yeah, who would have thought that Cooper Rush would have outplayed Jaden Daniels? But that was the fact, and I don't know what they were doing with Daniels. It seemed like when they moved him outside the pocket, he was getting things done. He was running well. He looked like he had a burst, which he hadn't had in a long time, maybe even since he was hurt against Carolina last month. So I don't I don't know why they did what they did, but it was a very stagnant offense and just a crazy, crazy football game and a crazy, crazy ending that leaves them in this spot. But I guess we all should have known that this was going to happen because this is the history of this series. And I picked out a bunch of random games between the Cowboys and Washington that I will go through now, not in any specific order, though I'm going to conclude with the granddaddy of them all, which happened 50 years ago this Thursday, the Clint Longley game. But let's go back from yesterday, 33 years to the day. It wasn't quite the same situation, but Washington was riding high. They were 11-0. They looked like a team that could run the table. Tony Kornheiser was writing his bandwagon columns, which were basically making fun of how good they were. They were crushing everybody. And 16-0 certainly seemed in play. Dallas comes to town November 24th, 91, exactly 33 years ago. Yesterday, Dallas was a rising team just 2 years before. They had won just one game. They played a little better in 1990, and they would become a playoff team in 1991, but they didn't look to be any match for Washington. And just before the half, Troy Aikman throws a Hail Mary pass to Alvin Harper, and Dallas takes the lead. And you go, ooh, wow. Aikman gets hurt in the second half. This future Hall of Fame quarterback is hurt. In comes Steve Berline, who's tremendous. He's 7 of 12. He throws a touchdown pass to Michael Irvin, who caught 9 passes for 130 yards, mostly against Darrell Green, who usually handled the top receiver, but not on this day. Dallas won the game 24-21, spoiling an undefeated season. They lost one more game at the end of the year against Philadelphia, but Joe Gibbs was resting everybody and then cruised through the playoffs. How about Thanksgiving of last year? Not that Ron Rivera had any chance to stay, but this put the final nail in the coffin. Dallas completely dominated this game, 45-10, 431 yards, 331 through the air, and the next day, Jack Del Rio was fired as coach. Dallas won in 2018 on Thanksgiving as Colt McCoy was intercepted 3 times. Or how about the game in 1989, November 5th of 1989? The Cowboys looked well on their way to 0-16. They come to town with Aikman hurt. Steve Walsh is the quarterback. It's a Sunday night game. And Doug Williams, who had won the Super Bowl just 2 years earlier, had a terrible night. He was intercepted twice, threw 52 passes, completed only 28 of them. They were held to 50 yards rushing, and Paul Palmer, who was from Churchill High School, had played at Temple, had the night of his life in the last year of his career, 18 carries for 110 yards and a touchdown. Roger Ruzek kicked 2 field goals, and Washington lost an ugly game 13-3. It was the only win for the Cowboys, and at 10-6, Washington missed the playoffs that year. Oh, how about 1992? The Cowboys on their way to the Super Bowl. They come into RFK Stadium. This is mid-December, late in the season. They're rolling. And Washington, this was the last year of Joe Gibbs won. They had won the Super Bowl the year before, but this was not the same team. It was an older team. It was an injured team. Mark Rippon, without the protection that he'd had the year before, couldn't perform as well as he did. And it just was a team that was having trouble scoring points. So it comes down to really a bizarre play, and we had a bunch of them yesterday, but this one stands out in the history as Washington was able to win 20-17. Troy Aikman lost the ball when he was sacked in the end zone by Jason Buck, and it was ruled a fumble, even though it appeared that Aikman was in the process of throwing the ball. Emmitt Smith picked up the ball, tried to throw it forward, was hit by Copeland, who jumped into a pile, wound up with the ball, then danced around like on the 20-yard line showing he had the ball. He needed to get back in the end zone to make sure it was a touchdown. They didn't have instant replay because instant replay had been done away with the year before, so they didn't really have any way to review it and make a call, but they awarded the touchdown to Washington. It was the 3rd fumble that the Cowboys had lost in the game. It was game 14 for them. In the first 13 games of the year, that's how many times they had fumbled the entire year. Emmitt said he was trying to throw a pass forward when the officials saw it, and they thought it might be an incomplete pass, but it was not. And instead, Washington holds on for the win, which was crucial for them as they kind of backed into the playoffs with 9 wins. They would lose their last 2. Dallas wouldn't lose again on their way to the Super Bowl, but that was a crucial win for Washington as they finished the year 9-7. And what a bizarre play with Danny Copeland coming out with the ball after Emmitt Smith tried to throw it, and it was ruled a fumble. Oh, you want to go back to 2006? This was the worst year that Joe Gibbs ever had. He was 5-11. But here comes the Cowboys in an early November game, and it looks like this is going to be yet another disappointing game for Washington. John Hall, the kicker, was hurt, and Nick Novak was filling in. Nick Novak, the former University of Maryland kicker. 31 seconds left in the game. Cowboys go 44 yards in 4 plays to set up a 35-yard field goal for Mike Vanderjagt, the liquored-up kicker who used to be money with the Colts and now had been picked up by the Cowboys in 2006. That's after he had said that Peyton Manning didn't have what it took to win the big game or something like that, and that's when Manning called him the liquored-up kicker. Well, the liquored-up kicker comes in to cement the game. There are 31 seconds to go, and he's now going to make it a 22-19 win for the Dallas Cowboys. They're tied at 19. Well, as he lines up to kick, here comes a player who, really was at the end. Most didn't think he was still in the league, but, Troy Vincent had been picked up. He had had a great career with the Philadelphia Eagles, also played in Buffalo, and they picked him up for depth in the secondary, and he comes to the line, and he blocks the kick with 6 seconds to go. But that's not all. The ball lands in the hands of Sean Taylor, who goes downfield for 46 yards. That's still not close enough to attempt a field goal to win the game. Otherwise, it looks like they're going into overtime. But there's a face mask penalty on Dallas offensive lineman Kyle Kozier. That's 15 more. So now the Redskins have the ball at the Cowboys' 31-yard line, where seconds before, the Cowboys had the ball at the Redskins' 35-yard line. And in came Nick Novak, 47-yard field goal. Redskins win 22-19, even though there was no time left on the clock. The run back by Sean Taylor used up the rest of the clock, and with no time left, Nick Novak kicked it through. And that was sort of the swan song for Vincent, as he's now an executive in the NFL front office. More from the Cowboys-Redskins rivalry over the years, and I'll save the most crushing for last. Let's go back to November 28th, 2002. This was Steve Spurrier year 1, and it was 28 years to the day after the Clint Longley disaster, also Thanksgiving Day of 2002. Redskins actually were entertaining playoff hopes going into this. They were 5-6. Danny Werfel, old Danny won a Heisman Trophy for the old ball coach at Florida, had beaten the defending NFC champion Rams at FedEx Field just 4 days earlier. And going into the third quarter, they were up 20-10 with Danny Werfel at Texas Stadium. He'd thrown touchdown passes to Rod Gardner, Zeron Flemister, and Darius Thompson. Hardly household names, but Washington is up 20-10. It was 20 because an extra point attempt by James Tuthill was blocked, and the holder, Brian Barker, got his nose mangled in the pileup. He managed to stay in the game, but, boy, he looked like a mess. Later, from his own 1-yard line, Werfel threw a short pass over the middle to Kenny Watson. The ball bounced out of Watson's hands into the hands of Roy Williams, who went in for the 5-yard touchdown. Dallas got within 3. The game winner was a 41-yard touchdown pass from Chad Hutchinson to Joey Galloway, and that happened in 2002. More from the rivalry. And this is, maybe why, and, talk about crazy games, but maybe this is why RG3 was there yesterday. I'll get into that mess in just a minute. But this was November 22nd, 2012, and this was the high water mark, really, for Robert Griffin III. This was the shining moment in a spectacular season, which came crashing down the following year. But Griffin was brilliant that afternoon. 3 touchdown passes to Aldrick Robinson, Pierre Garçon, and Santana Moss. Cowboys came back, but Griffin iced the win with a 29-yard touchdown pass to Niles Paul, 304 yards passing, a 131.8 passer rating. Jerry Jones said after the game in a somber locker room, really, I was in awe. I was disappointed in our play, but I was in awe of RG3. And for that day, they had it. But there is also this one, which is the crusher of all crushers. It was 50 years ago Thursday. We will, quote, unquote, celebrate this. This was a relatively new Texas stadium. It opened for just a few years, the hole in the roof, and this was America's team, and they were having kind of a tough season. But, Roger Staubach was still the quarterback. The problem that they had was that they had traded backup Craig Morton earlier in the year. So that left a rookie at Abilene Christian, small school, by the name of Clint Longley. And the big trash talker in the Redskins in those days was Dyron Talbert. And he said, leading up into the game, he said, well, if we knock Staubach out of the game, and you could talk that way in those days, if we knock Staubach out of the game, all they have is this kid. Well, actually, that's what happened. They knocked Staubach out of the game with the Redskins up 16-3. Ma, put on the turkey. It's time to eat. No, it was not. Clint Longley threw 2 touchdown passes. The second one, 50 yards to Drew Pearson in the final minute. I can still see Ken Stone's number 20, the back of his jersey, trying to catch Drew Pearson as he ran into the end zone. The Cowboys won 24-23, and the legend of the Mad Bomber was born. The epilogue is the following season, in which the Cowboys made the playoffs and went on to the Super Bowl unexpectedly. A young team with 12 rookies on the team. They went off and they played the Steelers in the Super Bowl, getting there with Roger Staubach, and Longley was the backup. The following year, 1976, which is Longley's third year on the team, he decides that he should have the starting job, and this dope decided to sucker punch Staubach as he was taking off his shoulder pads, so like he had the pads over his arms and his shoulders and he couldn't move, and Longley punched him, and Roger Staubach, who was a Green Beret, who served in Vietnam, would have actually torn the head off of Longley had he not been restrained by his teammates. Longley ran out of the building. They traded him to the San Diego Chargers, and the rest, as they say, is history. So that's some of the wild games that we've had between the Redskins and Washington and Commanders and Cowboys. And yesterday was about as wild, especially the last 5 minutes, of anything I've seen over watching this team for over 60 years. Just absolutely incredible. Coming up, RG3 showed up yesterday and apparently didn't understand that it wasn't about him, it was about the football game. I'll have some things to say about that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So when Robert Griffin III showed up here in 2012, he was seen as a sight for sore eyes. Realized what they had gone through in the previous 2 seasons. The disaster of Donovan McNabb, who Mike Shanahan finally had to bench. 2011. The indignity of Rex Grossman and John Beck, who was god-awful, and Grossman was an interception machine, so they had those two. So they needed a quarterback, and they had the number 6 pick. They traded up 4 spots to move into number 2, and everybody knew that they were going to take Robert Griffin III because it was a foregone conclusion that the Indianapolis Colts, who had the good fortune of Peyton Manning's injury to his neck happening the previous year, had won only 2 games, and Luck was going to be the next in succession as Manning, and had he stayed healthy, he might have been. He had that kind of talent. But Washington would get Robert Griffin III, the Heisman Trophy winner, and draft experts said, yeah, you might want to take Luck first, but you can't go wrong with Griffin. He's going to be great. And he was great in college. And he was great in that first year, including on that Thanksgiving Day in Dallas, where he threw 4 touchdown passes, and he was the toast of the NFL. But he got hurt a week later, Haloti Ngata, colliding with his knee, insisted he was going to play. He limped through a couple of games, and then his knee blew out in the playoff game against Seattle and was never the same. Now, there is a narrative that the injury ended his career, that the team was intent on playing him and kept him in the game when he was hurt. No. He insisted on playing when he was hurt because he was so insecure about Kirk Cousins taking his spot. And so he stayed in long enough to blow out his knee, and then he decided that he didn't want to play the way he had been playing the year before because it was too dangerous, and Mike Shanahan wanted to get him hurt. They finished 3-13, and things kind of declined from there, and he was never the same. And he's out of the NFL now, though he insists that he could play another 7 or 8 years. Who knows? But he's also a guy who's got his nose pressed up against the glass everywhere. And he was with ESPN and was doing well, at least getting good reviews for his work. He not only was doing college games, he was doing the Monday Night Countdown show. He was showing up on every show possible on the network. And then at the end of the season, they said, oh, yeah, we're not going to renew him. It's a budget thing. Balderdash. It was not a budget thing. He had years left on his contract. He was getting good reviews. But like RG3 likes to do, he sucked the air out of the entire room. Not a team player. Doesn't play well with others. Probably should have been what he started out to be at Baylor when he first got there, which was a hurdler. He probably could have been an Olympic hurdler. He was an incredible talent as a sprinter. He was not good as a runner in the NFL because he had no wiggle and he couldn't slide. And that's what led to many of the injuries that he had that knocked him out, not just here, but when he went to Cleveland and when he went to Baltimore. And that's why he's another reason why he's not playing in the NFL right now. So anyway, over the course of this season, the new ownership has done a really good job with this. They're celebrating the great alumni players who had been kind of, out of touch with the team because they hated Dan Snyder. They didn't want to deal with him. They had a wonderful retirement ceremony for Darrell Green's number 28 Carolina game. And they bring these players, Gary Clark has done it, Brian Mitchell, some of the others who are still around in town. They come in and they sign autographs and they go to the Legends Plaza and they kind of, schmooze around with the fans before the game. It's a really nice thing. So for this game, and I kind of was stunned by this when I heard about it, and it wasn't until, it might have been even Friday when I heard about it, maybe Thursday, that they were bringing back Robert Griffin III for the legend spot. And I thought, this is a really polarizing guy. Now, maybe they think they can get the juju karma from what happened in 2012 when he beat Dallas on Thanksgiving Day, and this is Thanksgiving weekend. So, maybe he can add to that. I don't know. But they brought him in. Okay, so he was the quote-unquote legend for the game. He showed up wearing a black cowboy hat, a burnt orange double-breasted suit, the University of Texas colors, which I found kind of curious since he went to Baylor, and Baylor and Texas are rivals, or it used to be anyway, in the Southwest Conference. They're only about 100 miles apart. And I thought, well, okay, that's odd. And he was wearing cowboy boots, and I thought that's really an odd look when you're playing the Cowboys. Well, sure enough, there was a plan for this. And as Candace Buckner wrote in her column today, on Sunday, the team brought back Robert Griffin III, and she puts this in quotes, legend of the game. He arrived at the stadium wearing, of all things, a cowboy hat. By the time he appeared on the video board, Griffin had changed into a black skull cap. While hamming it up, Griffin later revealed he was wearing a number 5 jersey beneath his suit jacket. Fans cheered for the stunt, and this is where I'm 100% aligned with her. The last thing the Commanders need is the ghost of RG3's career body snatching Daniels as he rises. That is 100% on point. This is the ghost of Christmas past coming up, looking for attention, stomping on the cowboy hat and waving the banner. And then when he realized the attention was on the game and not on himself, he takes off his shirt and he's wearing a Jaden Daniels jersey. It's always all about him. It's about Robert Griffin III. And then to compound things, he has the chutzpah to make it like, oh, no, I'm just a humble guy, and it's all about everything else. Earlier, I guess this was last year, when he was talking about Lamar Jackson. He'd been Lamar Jackson's backup for a few years in Baltimore. And RG3 he said this, I wish I had this quote, but he said, yeah, it was really cool to win the Rookie of the Year in my first year and have the great stats he threw. He did. He threw 20 touchdown passes, only 5 interceptions, ran for 850 yards. He was the toast of the town. But as Morgan Freeman said in Shawshank Redemption, hope is a dangerous thing. And hope for this team with RG3 turned out to be dangerous. But, he was somebody that people could really, get their arms around. So anyway, he flamed out. And now he's yesterday talking to Scott Abraham of Channel 7. And like he said, when he said that his greatest thrill was not doing all that in Washington, it was helping Lamar Jackson to become the superstar that he is, which is a bunch of baloney. He said he had the chutzpah to say this yesterday about his return to Washington and the fans re-embracing him.
First, I want to say thank you. Thank you to the fans. They made a dream come true for a small-town kid and myself from Copperas Cove, Texas, which most people don't even know where that is, to be able to come here and realize that there's no better city to win in than Washington, D.C., and to see them have the excitement. Like I said, it's not about me coming back and seeing it all. This excitement is here because of what Jaden Daniels and these guys are doing on the field. So I just feel like the city deserves this, and they deserve a winner. Jaden's going to finish what we started, and that we is not talking about me. It's talking about Doug Williams and Joe Theismann and myself and Kirk Cousins and every quarterback in between, because the city hasn't had a long-term quarterback really since the 80s and even before that. So I believe Jaden Daniels can be that. This city deserves that, so I'm excited for everybody at home that's watching.
Not about me. Not about me. Please, it is about you. And please don't group yourself in with the Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, because they actually finished. Joe Theismann finished. He won a Super Bowl, got them to another one. Doug Williams won a Super Bowl with a spectacular performance against the Denver Broncos, a historical performance, becoming the first African-American quarterback to start a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. And Mark Rippon finished by winning a Super Bowl. So it's not what they started and you were on the chain of that. No, you're part of the picture of the terrible Dan Snyder era in which things flamed out after promise. Hope is a dangerous thing, which it all flamed out, and you were symptomatic of how bad things were with Dan Snyder, because when things were going bad for you, you decided to undermine a head coach who put together the greatest coaching staff in recent years, and the evidence of that is that Mike Shanahan's assistants are all over the NFL and they're winning Super Bowls or going to Super Bowls, including his son, who's been there a couple of times. And you would have said, no, it's not about me. It is about you. And nobody tried to make it more about himself than RG3 did yesterday. They brought him in to be a legend, not to be a mascot. Maybe he was going to knock Tutty, whatever his name is, Major Tutty, out of his suit and wear that and wave the flag and stomp on a cowboy hat. You know, it's not about you. And to come back when you've been booted out of ESPN, I think, this is my opinion, for making it too much about yourself, and you're just dying for attention, and you show up and you try and do what you can to upstage the game. I mean, yeah, the fans were cheering. That was a fun little thing. But that's not what you're there for. You're there to engage the fans, maybe talk about your great year. There are still some people who like you. I'm sure there are. But I look at what happened yesterday as a complete embarrassment to the organization. He's not embarrassed by it. Hey, that's what any kind of attention he can get, that's what turns him on. But this act that he had yesterday, where he shows up in like a Halloween costume, where he's wearing a burnt orange double-breasted suit, a black hat, and comes down on the field and does this cheerleader routine, this mascot routine, where he stomps on the hat and waves the flag. And then if there's not enough attention, oh, look at me, I'm wearing a Jaden Daniels jersey. Well, good for you, Robert, because he's a really good quarterback. And unlike you, he doesn't try and make it about himself. Griffin arrived with these big endorsements from Gatorade and from Adidas, and he was all about himself. And also, if you listen to what the coaches said about him, they said, yeah, he does enough, but he could probably do more. What do we know about Jaden Daniels? He's studying tape at 5 o'clock in the morning. He's not trying to make it about himself. And for you to glom onto him and try and get the attention that he's getting, stop. And whoever made this decision with the team, and they made a lot of really good decisions and have done a lot of good things since taking over. But I would say to them, yeah, that's a one and done for Robert. If you're going to do legends, let's bring back somebody who's not going to try and make it all about himself. You know, that was a real damper. Now, you know, it didn't help that they lost the game, but even if they'd won, I would have thought that yesterday was kind of an embarrassing moment for them. Much more in the game coming up, what Dan Quinn says, what Jaden Daniels says, what Terry McLaurin says, much more. Washington coming off a stinker yesterday. We'll see if they can save the season as we continue. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. You know, today is the 45th anniversary of the first pairing of Pat Summerall and John Madden, who did so many classic Redskin Cowboy games over the years. And they did some crazy ones as well. And maybe this would have fit right in with what they used to do, what happened yesterday at Northwest Stadium. But this was one for the books. And more importantly, a team that looked like it was having a Cinderella season is starting to see the carriage turn into a pumpkin. Can they still ride into the playoffs? Yes, they can. But they got to get right, and they got to get right pretty soon. They got a Tennessee team coming to town, a team that looked very beatable as the 3-win Cowboys did yesterday. Well, here come the 3-win Tennessee Titans, and they're coming off the win yesterday over a team that clobbered Dallas just a few days earlier. That's another thing about yesterday that's really disturbing. This was a Washington team that was arrested. They didn't look good against Philadelphia, but they had 10 days to get ready for it. Dallas was not only playing on the road, but they were playing on a short week. They had played at home Monday night against Houston. So you would have thought every advantage would have gone to Washington, and they did have their chances. My God. I mean, they kept getting chance after chance after chance in the first half, where it's missed field goals, a blocked punt, a turnover. It was there for the taking. Dallas was saying, here, we stink. Take this. And they couldn't take it. It's a 3-3 game at the half. I mean, even that, they should have easily taken a 3-0 lead into the half. And, in fact, I was thinking when it was 3-0, this might actually end like a game in 1993 when they played the Jets, and the Jets won 3-0, a game that included a snap on a field goal attempt hitting holder Louis Aguiar in the head from the Jets, but they managed to kick one field goal. Washington had Bupkis, and they lost the game 3-0. I was thinking maybe this is going to be in reverse. They'll hold on to win 3-0. And I saw people bemoaning on Twitter, I bet the over. I got no chance here. Wound up with a 60-point total between the two games. So it was just nutso yesterday. And I will get to later in the hour the 45th anniversary of Madden and Summerall. And as we head into Thanksgiving this week, I mean, they really changed the whole tenor of Thanksgiving. Football's always been a part of it, but they made it so big, and really, the way people center the holiday around it now, I think they owe a lot to Pat Summerall and John Madden, who maybe you could argue were not the best to ever do it together, but they are among the most legendary teams in the history of broadcasting. So we'll get to that coming up. This is Dan Quinn after the game, and what a bizarro game it was, especially in the last 5 minutes of the game. This is how he opened his news conference at Northwest Stadium.
What I told the team after the game was that this is the most challenged we've been in our time together. And I reminded them it's not enough to learn the lessons, but we have to apply them. And love the fight that we have, fight games, close games, but we've got to apply them. Learn the lesson of the finishing the ball, whatever that might apply to. We've got to make sure we do that. And so I reminded them it's never about one play. And so that execution falls on all of us players and coaches. And I firmly believe that. And so we'll get to it tomorrow. We'll look at the tape and get right to the truth of it all.
Yeah. He's said throughout the season about lessons. Now he's getting to the point, okay, we've had the lessons. Now let's apply them, which they didn't seem to do. It was just one mistake after another. And it's a team, I want to say young team, because they've got a lot of veterans on it, but it's a team that's kind of been hodgepodge patched together. And, you look at what Adam Peters did as he was asked at his opening news conference back in January by David Aldridge, what do you think of the current roster? And he waited 3.5 seconds before he would come up with something like, yeah, there's some pieces here, and then pretty much flipped it over. Now, he had a lot of money to spend, And he didn't go crazy in free agency. He brought in some veteran guys and really some great finds like Frankie Louvu, and Bobby Wagner's done a good job. He got some offensive linemen like Nick Allegretti, who's played really well. And he's really shored things up. But it was bargain basement shopping. I mean, they were going into Filene's basement to find these guys. And that's what they've put together. Zach Ertz, another cast off. Remember, he had been cut by Arizona last season. And was out of football and then hooked on with the Lions at the end of the season, but didn't play. He would have played had they made it to the Super Bowl, but he was out on the street, and he's been a big addition this year and caught the touchdown pass to put them right back in the game. Remember, this game looked over. It was 20-9. And with 5 minutes to go, okay, it gets interesting. Here's a touchdown pass to Ertz, and they get the 2-point conversion from Jaden Daniels, and they're back in business 20-17. But then all that crazy Michigas unfolded in the last few minutes of the game. This was Ertz talking to reporters. And here's I think, the most encouraging thing about yesterday. As I say, success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan. And to a man, you were hearing them say, no, put it on me. It's my fault. Whether it's Jeremy Reeves, who has been an all-pro special teamer, who got juked on the touchdown where there was a spin move and he got faked out of his shoes. He took the blame for it. And Ertz, even though he performed and caught the touchdown pass, he dropped another one. They had a number of drops yesterday as well. Not a touchdown pass he dropped, but another pass that he dropped. He was among those who said, yeah, it's on us. It's on me.
As an offense, we just didn't do our part, I feel like, to win a game. And ultimately, that is very frustrating as an offensive guy, as a leader on the offense, that we just could not execute at a high enough level to win the game. And we take a lot of ownership in that. And we got to reflect. We got to get better. There's no pointing fingers. We just got to get better.
To that point, the offense is not firing on all cylinders right now. How do you get it going?
It's just, it's a full – everyone's got to take accountability, do their part to get a little bit better. I don't think we're far off, but from the looks of the first 3.5 quarters, it seems from afar, I'm probably sure that it looks like we're very far off, but I don't think that's the case. I got a lot of belief in the guys. I got a lot of belief in that quarterback. And I think we just got to get back to work. And practice this week was a good week of practice. Obviously, it didn't come to fruition in the game to execute at the level that we want to. But we just got to get back to work. We still got 5 more games of the season. We got to finish on a high note and just see what happens. But it starts with practice. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, execute on Sunday.
You have some adversity right now. So how do you get the momentum back?
Work. There's no other recipe in this league besides work. I've been in this league for 12 years now, and there's no substitute for practicing hard, getting better at your craft. If you get better individually 1%, that means the team's going to get better 1%. So I'm a firm believer in how you practice and how you approach practice is going to dictate how you play in the game. And we just got to continually improve.
Back to work on Wednesday. Now, one thing about the bye week, and I've learned this years ago. I remember hearing this from Irving Fryer. He said, watch out when the team is heading into a game for the bye week. It's hard to get them to focus. Now, the 3 straight losses will probably help. But this could be another of those games. They got the latest bye week again this year. It's week 14, so they got to play another game. And they're hurt. They're banged up. They may not have their running backs. So Brian Robinson may be out with the sprained ankle, and you can pretty much count on Austin Eckler being out. And this may have ended his career. That may be overreactionary, but it's his second concussion of the year, and they had to take him to the hospital. It wasn't like they could just evaluate him in the locker room. They'd take him to the hospital. So there's real concern, and he's been a big part of what they've done this year. But if they take care of what they can do and beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, I know that's saying a lot in the NFL because they were supposed to beat Dallas yesterday. They were 10.5-point favorites. But if they can get by Tennessee, that can give them a big exhale with a week off, and then off the bye, they go to the Saints, who've been kind of up and down this year. They're not a good team, but if they win there, okay, that puts them back on track with 9 wins. And I think they won't be Philadelphia, but I think between the last 2 games, Atlanta at home and Dallas on the road, they win one of the 2. They get 10 wins, and they're in. But right now, they're in the last spot. If you were seeding the playoffs now, they're in the 7th spot. Here's how things line up. Detroit running away, not totally running away with the NFC East, but they look like the best team. Philadelphia's on the move after an 0-2 start. They've won 9 straight, so they're rolling as they did last night with 255 yards from Saquon Barkley. They're 9-2. And then you got division leaders from weak division. Seattle 6-5, they're in the 3 spot. Atlanta 6-5, they're in the 4 spot. And Minnesota, which nobody expected to do what they've done this year, they're 9-2 with Sam Darnold. I mean, they were, J.J. McCarthy, they took him in the first round. Some were talking about him as being the best quarterback in the draft. He's not going to play at all this year. He got hurt in the preseason, knee injury. He's out. And Darnold has led them to a 9-2 record. Green Bay looked very good yesterday in beating up a collapsing San Francisco team. They're 8-3. They're in the 6th spot. And then Washington in the 7th spot at 7-5. But the teams that they're competing with for the last spot right now don't look that great. Arizona's played better lately. Washington beat them at Arizona off a short week coming out of Cincinnati on a Monday night. The Rams are 5-6, as I say, got run over last night by Saquon Barkley and the Eagles. And San Francisco looked they didn't have Brock Purdy, but they looked non-competitive in the game against Green Bay. So they may slide in, and off a year of, let's face it, look, what were the expectations? Let's zoom out a little bit. When you got the head coach of Dan Quinn, it was like, okay, they kind of settled. They really wanted Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson decided he was going to stay in Detroit another year. So, okay, retread coach. Let's see. All the free agents that they brought in, there was no wow factor there. So to see them at 7-5 right now, if you'd have said after 12 games they'd be 5-7, you'd say, oh, that's pretty good, And is there promise from the quarterback? Well, yes, there is. It's fading a little bit, but this is what you expected. This is the kind of thing that was going to be expected when you had a rookie quarterback going through the growing pains with a team that was a 4-win team last year and had to be gutted with, not a lot of wows. The Marshawn Lattimore deal, I wonder if that deal would still be made if the team was playing like it was then, like it's playing now, because they were 7-2 when they went out and got him. And he hasn't played in the last 3 games because of the hamstring injury, and they gave up some pretty good draft capital to get him. That was a move, I think, where it was like, hey, we're maybe better than we thought. We're a year ahead of schedule. Let's go out and get a veteran corner, which we need badly, and we'll give up what we have to give up because who knows? Maybe we make a run. Maybe we get to the NFC Championship game, okay? Maybe. I think it was done. I don't know if you make that deal now. As for Daniels, not the best game of his career for sure. He threw 2 interceptions. He had only, I think, 3 coming into the game. And he was 25 of 38 for 274 yards, kind of pedestrian. He did run a lot better, and I think that was an encouraging sign. Dan Quinn said this week, hey, I just want to say honestly that he's not injured. Well, and then we went through all that mishigas about him wearing the heating pad. And he said because it's cold outside, it was over 50 yesterday, so he wasn't putting the heating pad on. He had other games where it was kind of warm, so there was that. But this is the expectation that you have. He did run 7 times for 74 yards, so that's the encouraging thing. And, if you're second-guessing the decision to try the extra point instead of going for 2 when they were down by only 1 late in the game on the incredible touchdown from Terry McLaurin, then you could look at Jaden Daniels around the goal line, what a dual threat he is. A couple of things from Daniels, and this is pretty much typical of the way he's talked all year. He's taken responsibility when things have gone wrong. No finger pointing, which you did not see from anybody yesterday. And here's how he assessed what happened in this wreckage of a 34-26 game.
Anytime you lose a game or you lose a game in that type of facet, it's very difficult, and it's tough, but it never comes down to one play. There's plays throughout the game where little things that add up to big things.
Late in the game, the offense got going, but for 3 quarters, it was really pretty tough sledding. What did Dallas do that was so difficult for you guys today?
We just haven't been executing how we did prior. Our execution, throughout this game, we had short fields, stuff like that. We just didn't capitalize on those opportunities.
The ebbs and flows of a football game, when you hit Terry and he goes the distance, it kind of felt like the Hail Mary night where you're going to get stuff done at the end and then you miss the kick. What is that like? What are you going through when that takes place?
I couldn't even tell you my type of emotions, but as you as I'm learning, man, you don't ride the roller coaster. You stay even keeled throughout it all because it's a long season. A lot of things can happen in a game in the NFL. So, man, just try to stay even keeled and control the things you can control.
Yeah, and that's pretty much been his MO throughout the season. But here's the scary part of this, and I don't think it's scary long term because he's really a student of the game. He works hard at it. I don't think that there's going to be this falling off the cliff. And the ghost of RG3 showing up yesterday was not helpful to the whole scenario. But there is clearly a drop-off in play. And when defensive coordinators get more and more tape on you, they make adjustments for what you do well. And Daniels is well aware of that.
I think teams and coordinators are going to see what other teams have success against them and try to figure out how they could incorporate that into their scheme. So, I mean, you kind of see stuff on third downs. We've been in third and longers a lot, these past couple games. So that's kind of where you get into those exotic pressures and stuff like that. And, we just got to be better on first and second down to stay ahead of the chains.
Yeah, that's a real big issue, third downs. In fact, I had this number from last week. What was it? That they were on third downs. They were 3 for 12 against Philadelphia and 5 of 14 against Pittsburgh. So going into this game, 8 for 26 on third downs. And then yesterday, what they did on third down, they were 4 for 12. So let's do the math here. 8 for 26, that's 38. So 12 for 38 in the last 3 games. That's not going to get it done. And what he's saying is we're setting up too many times in third and long. Coming up, and I'll do this on the other side, there's a couple of guys who have been here for a while, have seen the worst of times, and thought maybe the corner has been turned, and maybe it has been, but you can hear it in their voice, the disappointment of 7-2 turning into 7-5, and what it might mean for a season that looked to have some magic attached to it, and maybe it doesn't. We'll get to what Terry McLaurin says, also Sam Cosme, a couple of veterans from this organization. As we continue, it's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So when Dan Quinn was introduced as the head coach in January, and he was asked about rebuilding, he said, I don't use that word, I use recalibrating. And maybe we have to recalibrate at various stages of the season. Did we recalibrate when the team got off to that great start, when they got to 7-2, and you start salivating not just about the playoffs, but how far they can go? And Jayden Daniels, Rookie of the Year, forget that. How about MVP? And now, the way the Broncos are playing right now, and I don't even know if he's going to win the Rookie of the Year, but he's going through the growing pains that you go through. But you look at guys who've been here for a long time and have gotten second contracts. Sam Cosme, who got his extension at the beginning of the year after being drafted out of Texas, one of the few good draft picks that worked out from the Ron Rivera era. And he looked at this team and he said, oh, yeah, this is totally different than what we've had here. And I think anybody could see that. And now, 3 straight losses, some of the same problems that were occurring during his first 3 years here with the team, when it was, especially the first 2, when it was an absolute mess under Dan Snyder and, not a place where anybody wanted to be. And like the headline says in the Post today, feels like old times. Not old times meaning when the Cowboys and the Redskins were big rivals and playing each year for the division championship. No, this is more like the old times and the old times under Dan Snyder. So having experienced that, Cosme's asked, well, look what's happening now. How do you feel about it?
We like to get defenses on their heels, so the tempo aspect of things, and that's kind of like the offense we run. So it's we're not doing that right now. And I don't know, it's just like there's miscommunication or what. I can't put my finger on it. I really can't. But it's just not firing at all cylinders right now. But nothing we cannot fix, and get in the room together and talk about it. So I'm not worried about this this team and where trajectory is going. Obviously not the outcome we wanted. Definitely not the outcome we wanted, but you can't underestimate any team in the NFL despite what their record there is or who they have and da-da-da-da. You know, any given Sunday is a true thing in this league. So, you know, we just didn't come to play to win today.
Why aren't you worried?
That's a good question. I'm not worried because I know we have a bunch of guys that really, really care, you know, and they don't quit.
Why aren't you worried? That's a good question. Terry McLaurin, kind of the same thing, you know. How do you stay confident with this?
You know, that's a good question. You know, for me, I think I just want to continue to try to control what I can, keep our making sure that we have the right attitude and approach as we come into practice in the games. You know, trying to make a play when the ball comes to me and, you know, just controlling that aspect of my job. And I try to provide a spark when I can. And as a team, we just have to, as an offense, we have to find a better job of staying on the field. I think that was a strength of ours in the first half of the season. And, you know, it's not right now. So we got to figure out how to get that back to being a strength of our offense, because when we're tempo, when we're staying on the field, it allows us to keep the playbook open and continue to put pressure on the defense, and just being in second and manageable, third and manageable. You know, I mean, I think we can do a better job of that. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to continue to try to come in with a good attitude and be a leader and continue to rally the guys that are around me. But nobody's hanging their head. But at the same time, this one definitely sucks.
Nobody's hanging their head, but it sucks. You know, he's been through this, and he's been a good soldier through thick and thin. But right now it's thin again. And, you know, Dan Quinn has kind of ridden the roller coaster with this team, and he's telling everybody, yeah, we got to stop this ups and downs stuff, and we got to get back on the track.
Yeah, I want to make sure, like, this confidence is rolling whoever we're playing, Ben, and I don't want it to go up and down and up and down. So, again, I'll look back at the tape, and the best part of this is, like, you get to go dig in and go for it again, man. And, but, like, from a performance side, is there plenty to clean up on? You bet. And you don't want to miss an opportunity. And when you got a home game and going for it in the division, you want to take advantage of those. And when you miss them, it stings.
Yeah. Now, Bobby Wagner has been on a team that went to back-to-back Super Bowls. That would qualify that team, I think, as a great team. Seattle, which won one, probably should have won another one, but they didn't give the ball to Marshawn Lynch. And there was an interception by Russell Wilson, and New England was able to hang on. Wagner says this, and, you know, veteran guys, especially veteran guys who have played on Super Bowls, I've said this before, that Darryl Green, when he was on the 7-1 team in 1996, and at that point in his career had played in 3 Super Bowls, winning 2 of them, said, hey, we're not that good. Don't get too excited about yourself. We're not that good. Bobby Wagner actually uses the term great to describe this team. Maybe he's trying to pump them up, whatever, but he's telling you, you know, this is the guy who doesn't really have to do this, but he is a leader in the locker room. So this is what Bobby Wagner is saying about this team. Maybe a last-ditch effort to get the confidence back on track.
This is a great team. This is a great team. And a lot of people are going to finish and write the story. We have 4 games left, or however many games left. And so talk to me at the end of that season. But, like, I'm not one of the guys that's going to dive into the negativity, and obviously we've lost 3 straights and things like that. And all this will go away once we win and go on a 4-game winning streak. Then you guys will come in and say, what went right? And the questions will be different. It's just where we're at in the moment. You understand where we're at in the moment. But I have all the confidence in this group and this team. I'm excited for the challenge that we have in front of us, and I think we're going to do an amazing job. And I look forward to seeing you in 4 games.
Well, that's actually 5 that finishes out the season, and that will be a clip and save that if they go on a 4-game win streak, which is going to be tough to do, Tennessee and New Orleans, 2 teams they should beat, but New Orleans is on the road. Then Philadelphia here, and Philadelphia, at that point is likely to be battling still with Detroit to get the first-round bye. You know, they've redone the playoffs, so only the top seed in each conference gets a bye, so they're probably playing for something big there. That's Week 16, December 22nd, and then Atlanta at home, either the 28th or the 29th. I think it's the 29th, but they don't have a time yet. And then they finish up at Dallas January 4th or January 5th. A 4-game win streak would be something. If they can win the next 4, Tennessee at home, New Orleans on the road, Philadelphia at home, Atlanta at home, and then head into the last game against Dallas, then we're talking about something different. But interesting to hear Bobby Wagner use the term great team. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, this is the crossroads now. This is where we're going to find out. This is where we're going to see about the Cliff Kingsbury offense, which has a history of tailing off at the end of the season. This is a rookie quarterback who, has now played a full college season, right? It's 12 games that they played. That's all they play in college. And then if there's a bowl game, it's got to be something meaningful, or, he opts out, which he did last year. So he's got a lot of football left to play. The team has a lot left to play. Veterans like Bobby Wagner using the term great. Let's see. But the recalibrate, that goes a lot of different ways. And, now Quinn is looking at reestablishing the confidence which they clearly had in the first 9 games of the season.
Yeah, I want to make sure, this confidence is rolling whoever we're playing, Ben, and I don't want it.
Oh, he already played that. He said that. So that was Dan Quinn yesterday. So we'll wrap that up. I'll have much more to say about the game and where they're going, and we'll have the news conference today from Dan Quinn. I'll have a reaction to that and more tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.